What's up, Coach? How are you this morning?
I'm good, man. Sorry, bro. I was dancing to the intro music, man. Wasn't
Yeah, I
ready
don't
for
know
the
what you
camera to
set
come
up
on yet.
last week without me being here. But here we go. I liked it. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Week 9 Sunday morning Coach Approach Start and Sit show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Great job last week filling in for me going solo. You killed it. Listened to you all the way until I got a ticket on the I-10. But great job last week, Coach.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Certainly missed having you, man, last week, dude. It was we had a lot of fun, but always better when you're on it.
Jared, welcome. Good morning. Thank you for tuning in. Everybody, if you have start sit questions, bring them in. Just like Coach did last week, our focus is always on you guys and your questions, but we will try and get through all the games. Let's get started. Game 1, New Orleans Saints 2-6 at the Carolina Panthers 1-7. My pick, I like the Saints 28, Panthers 14. Who do you have in this one, Coach?
Yeah, we're pretty close. Sometimes in life, it's all about timing, right? Derek Carr comes back and gets the Carolina defense. So I've got Saints 34, Carolina Panthers 17.
Okay, let's get into the New Orleans starting sits. New Orleans offense, 16th in scoring with 23.1 points per game, 21st in rushing yards with 116, and 19th in passing, 203. That's without Derek Carr, though, the last 3 weeks. Who are we starting sitting for New Orleans, Coach?
Yeah, so we talk about the quarterback room with Derek Carr. Carolina gives up the fifth most fantasy points per game, ninth most passing yards, the most touchdowns allowed to quarterbacks this season. So I like Derek Carr this week in his game back. He's QB 23 in fantasy points per game on the season. Through 5 touchdown passes, he's just 1 interception the first 2 games of the season on just 19 and a half pass attempts per game. Obviously, over the next 3 games, he had 3 interceptions, 3 touchdowns, did not play well, only 182 yards passing per game. Was QB 28 over the last 3 games he played. Back in week 1 against the Panthers, though, he was 19 to 23, 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think he's a solid QB2 this week. So I'm starting Derek Carr in super flex formats, one quarterback leagues. You might have better options. Running back room, Carolina allows the most fantasy points per game to running back. So we love Alvin Kamara this week. He's RB4 on the season. He's had 5 games with over 100 scrimmage yards and 6 games with at least 5 receptions. So he's a must start this week and pretty much every week. Wide receiver room, Carolina allows the 12th most fantasy points per game, 12th most receptions, and 12th most receiving yards to the wide receivers. Chris Olave, I think, is a smash start this week. His first game without Rashid Shaheed, he had a 90% route participation rate, 29% targets per route run, and 36% target share. Targeted 42 times, hauling in 8 grabs. So he's a start for me this week. And then tight end room, Carolina, again, shocking. They give up the most fantasy points to tight end position. Name a position, they're not very good against them on defense. So Taysom Hill for me is a mid tight end 2. He played 40% of the snaps last week, had 4 carries, 20 yards, completed a pass, and also had 2 grabs on 4 targets. Both Kendre Miller and Jamal Williams look like they're likely out this week, so expect Taysom Hill to have some opportunities as the RB2. So I'm actually confident in playing Taysom Hill as a tight end 2 this week. Obviously, if you have better options, you can put him in your lineup, but in deeper leagues or deeper formats or due to injuries, I'm okay playing Taysom Hill. What say you?
I agree. I love Taysom Hill today. Before we get into the Carolina start and sit, Jared Nelson, we've got Dak or Cousins. They're facing off against each other. I think I'm expecting a big Kirk Cousins week. So it's Kirk for me. What about you, Coach?
Yeah, if all things being equal, I think Kirk Cousins is the better player right now. I think the tough part is because Dallas is so bad, and we'll get into that game breakdown. If this game becomes, Atlanta gets ahead early and they start to lean a little bit more on the run game, as Dallas is basically in last place in every metric against the run, is the only thing I would see holding Kirk Cousins back. But otherwise, I would play Kirk Cousins over Dak Prescott this week too.
Okay, let's move on to Jace. Jace Scott, half point PPR, Zay Flowers or Ladd. I think they're pretty much the same player this week. I think you got Ladd McConkey's the wide receiver 26, Zay Flowers the wide receiver 27. So just based off the rankings, I'd go Ladd. Who do you like better though, Coach?
I actually like Ladd McConkey too. I think what he did last week in the Chargers game, then of course he is the wide receiver 1. I think in that offense, Zay Flowers now gets some help with Deontay Johnson now being on the Ravens squad. We don't know what that's going to look like this week, but I think Ladd McConkey solidified himself as a wide receiver 1 in that offense, especially with QJ having been out.
All right, hey, let's get to Ryan's question. Ryan needs to start either Etienne, Bigsby, or Jordan Addison. We talked about Jordan Addison. We were talking about Scott Fishbowl earlier today. We both don't like him this week, especially when we've got tight end back for Minnesota. So that takes us Etienne or Bigsby. I know Etienne is back, but I think Bigsby is kind of taking that RB1 role there. So it's Bigsby of those three. Coach, do you agree with that one?
Yeah, Bigsby too. I think he gets the early down work. His advanced metrics are much better than Etienne's. Etienne's best opportunities in third downs. If they're behind, he's going to have an opportunity in the passing game. But I'm still starting Bigsby.
All right. Hey, thank you once again. I appreciate the question, Ryan. Let's get back to the New Orleans Carolina game. Carolina's starting sit. Carolina's offense, 29th in scoring at 15.5 points per game, 24th in rushing, 104 yards a game, 30th in passing with 177. Quarterback room, we've got Bryce Young this week. He is a sit, quarterback 29. New Orleans gives up the 11th fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks, fourth most passing yards, third fewest TDs. So not a great matchup for Bryce Young, who's struggled against any matchup. Go to the running back room. New Orleans is seventh most fantasy points per game. So I like Chuba this week. We kind of, as a dynasty manager that drafted a lot of Jonathan Brooks, kind of hoped that we were going to see some of him this week. However, late in the week, they said he would not play. So no Jonathan Brooks once again. Takes us to the wide receiver room. New Orleans Saints gives the 10th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers, 7th most receptions, 5th most receiving yards, and 5th most TDs. Wide receiver 45 on the week, Xavier Legette. I have him as a flex start. Jalen Coker, if you were on Twitter this week, that's all you read about, especially with the trading of Deontay Johnson. I'm still not ready to start him. I wish we had more production out of the quarterback spot, but he's definitely someone that you want to keep your eye on in dynasty leagues with Jalen Coker. Tight end room, Jatavion Sanders is a sit for me. Moving on, game 2. Wait, before we move on, let's go back to Jared. We got Sam Laporta versus the Green Bay Packers, or Cole Kmet versus the Arizona Cardinals. Who do you like better in that one, Coach?
I actually like Sam Laporta this week. I know it's been a rough start for him. I've got the Lions breakdown. We get the Lions-Packers game. I think Sam Laporta plays well. He's got 2 touchdown grabs this year, and neither one of them came from Jared Goff, but I do like Sam Laporta this week.
Okay, how about Romeo Doubs or Coleman this week?
I like Romeo. Yeah, I like Romeo Doubs in that matchup. I think, he's always on the field. Doesn't matter if it's 10, 11, 12 personnel. Romeo Doubs is always on the field. He's played well in games that Jordan Love has played. I think there's a little bit more of a safer floor with him. With Keon Coleman, of course, as a perimeter receiver, you get the opportunity for big plays. But I go Romeo Doubs there. I'm more comfortable in that matchup.
I hear you, but I'm going to go with the ceiling play. I like Coleman. Let's go Josh Downs or Kareem Hunt. For me, you got to love what we're seeing out of Josh Downs this year, especially now that we know that we're going to continue to see the old man back there at quarterback. But you also got to love what we've seen out of Kareem Hunt. This is a tough one for me, Coach. Who do you like?
Yeah, I go Josh Downs too. I think Kareem Hunt, in the run game is what 3.3 yards a carry over the last few games, but he's giving you that volume play. Pacheco is still out, so I think in terms of volume, but he's got to find the end zone in order to pay off. I think Josh Downs is going to continue to get peppered with Joe Flacco. So in PPR, I'm going to lean Josh Downs based on volume in the passing game alone.
All right, let's move on to game 2. Washington Commanders 6-2 at the New York Giants 2-6. I like Washington winning 35, Giants 17. Who do you like in this one, Coach?
Yeah, I've got Washington Commanders 31, New York Giants 13. Daniel Jones has 4 interceptions, no touchdown passes at home this season. So Giants have not looked good at home.
Okay, Washington start sit. Washington's offense 3rd in scoring, 3rd in rushing, 9th in passing. Who are we starting for New York Giants? Excuse me. Who are we starting for the Commanders?
Yeah, so we're starting Jaden Daniels, obviously. The New York Giants saw the 7th most fantasy points per game and 5th most rushing yards to quarterbacks. And they do lead the NFL with 35 sacks, but again, you're getting a mobile quarterback in Jaden Daniels, ability to move the pocket. He's QB4 on the season, at least 20 fantasy points in 6 out of 8 games. Jaden Daniels is absolutely in your lineup. As far as the running back room goes, Giants are 16th in fantasy points per game allowed to running backs and give up the 7th most rushing yards and 8th most receptions. Brian Robinson did have an injury, the hamstring injury that popped up earlier this week. He is expected to play, though. I think it's a smash matchup against the Giants, who give up the highest missed tackle rate and third highest explosive run rate. So I like Brian Robinson this week. Austin Eckler, just a 48% snap share and 25% rush share. With him, it's about maximizing touches in the passing game. As long as Brian Robinson is healthy, he's going to get the goal line work. On PPR formats, deeper leagues, you could probably throw Austin Eckler in there, but not a must start for me. Wide receiver room.
Hold up real quick. You guys that are on here and you see information like Andrew telling us that Brian Robinson is out, that helps us immensely. Thank you so much. So that probably changes your Eckler talk you're talking right now.
Yeah, it does. It's funny because at 1 o'clock this morning, even at 5 o'clock this morning, I was still going through that and hadn't seen that yet. So yeah, obviously now Austin Eckler becomes a play, and Brian Robinson clearly is not. So yeah, Austin Eckler, especially in PPR formats, is a must start this week.
Okay, let's move on to a couple questions before we get to the other side with the New York Giants. New York Giants is pretty easy. Malik Neighbors I'm playing, and then I'm playing the running back, Tyrone Tracy. He was in concussion protocol all week, but now he has been cleared. He's taken over that role. Feel real comfortable with both those guys. Everyone else on the Giants I'm not playing, so we pretty much handled that side of the ball. Let's go to Andrew. Andrew wants to know PPR flex, McConkey or Irving. I'm going McConkey. He's clear wide receiver 1 there. Irving, yes, we love, but he's still getting a little Rachaad White, or he's getting a little Sean Tucker sprinkled in with him. You agree with that one, Coach?
Yeah, if you look at what the Kansas City Chiefs have done against running backs this year, I'm not starting a running back against that Kansas City defense. So I'm just glad McConkey for me.
All right, here we go. Jared Nelson, we've got Adunze, Eckler, Kmet, or Elijah Moore. Who do you like in that one?
I think that's pretty easy now. Now we know Brian Robinson Jr. is out. It's Austin Eckler for me. Rome Odunze still has not found his place in that offense with Keenan Allen back. I think Keenan Allen and DJ Moore are still the top 2 options that offense. I like Kmet. I like Elijah Moore, but I like Eckler better.
Alex Johnson, thank you so much. Amari Cooper is also out. So earlier we had a Romeo Doubs or Keon Coleman question. I said Keon Coleman was a play
Keon
for me
Coleman now.
So Coleman kind of is more of an uptick. Yep. So we like Coleman over Doubs. All right. Thank you so much. We'll get back to the questions as soon as we get some more. Let's get to our game 3. Game 3, Miami Dolphins 2-5 at Buffalo Bills 6-2. I like the Bills 27, Dolphins 21. Who do you have in this one, Coach?
Yeah, I think the Miami Dolphins are must-win territory, but unfortunately you get the Bills at home this week. I got Buffalo Bills 27, Dolphins 23.
Miami offense 32nd in scoring, 9th in rushing, 26th in passing yards. But again, that's only with 3 games played with Tua. Quarterback room. Go ahead, Coach. Tell us about Miami.
Yeah, this is not a good start for Tua Tagovailoa. The Bills allow the 5th fewest fantasy points per game and 10th fewest touchdown passes to quarterbacks, and they also have the 8th most interceptions with 8 on the season. Tua Tagovailoa get back in when they played the Bills. He did not play well earlier this season. 17 of 25 for 145 yards. Did have a touchdown pass, but also had 3 interceptions. That was the game he was knocked out with the concussion. Do not like this matchup for Tua, so he's a sit for me. Running back room, Buffalo allows the 9th most fantasy points per game and the most receptions and most receiving yards to running backs. That is great for Devon Achane. He's RB11 this week for me, RB17 in fantasy points per game on the season. That's standard scoring, and PPR scoring is a little bit higher. I like Devon Achane this week, obviously. Raheem Mostert, for me, he's getting all the goal line work. I think he's got 5 red zone carries over the last few games. He's back as a goal line back, so he gives you touchdown upside. The volume has not been there. With just a 40% snap share over the last 2 games, so he is touchdown dependent, so tread lightly there. I do think he finds the end zone, though, so take that for what it's worth. Wide receiver room, Buffalo allows the 4th fewest fantasy points per game and 9th fewest receiving yards to wide receivers. It doesn't matter. Tua Tagovailoa is behind center. Tyreek Hill, we know what he did last year leading the NFL in receiving yards. I'm not sitting Tyreek Hill in any matchup, so he's in your lineups. Jalen Waddle, wide receiver 65 in fantasy points per game at just 8.3. It's been a very disappointing season there. In the 2 full games of Tua, he's totaled 9 grabs and 11 targets for 154 yards with just a 14.7% target share. So even with Tua in, I don't love Jalen Waddle. I get it in deeper formats as a wide receiver 3 flex play. You might be forced to use him. Jono Smith, tight end 18 with Tua back. To me, it's the Achan, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle show. And that leaves very little left on the bone for Jono Smith. He's not a must start for me.
Okay, let's get to Ryan's question real quick. We've got half PPR, Odunze, Worthy, or D-Hop. It's Worthy for me, Coach. Who do you want of those three?
Yeah, we don't know we're getting with D-Hop yet in Kansas City, so I don't trust playing him in terms of usage, so I'm going to go with Xavier Worthy there. I think they scheme plays for him. Not getting a lot of volume. It gives you touchdown upside. I like Xavier Worthy there too.
Okay, let's move on to DJ Wavy. DG. Pick 3, Cup, Hill, Down, Swift, Mooney, MHJ. That is tough. Let's start with receivers. What do you like, Coach?
I can give you mine. To me, it's your first 3 guys, and I know what DeAndre Swift has done. We'll get to that in the Bears matchup. I love what he has done, but Cooper Kupp is hard for me to sit with Matthew Stafford back. He got you 5 grabs and a touchdown last week. Tyreek Hill, we just talked about him. It's hard to sit Tyreek Hill in that offense. And, of course, Josh Downs, we talked about him getting peppered in games that Joe Flacco plays. So, and then Swift. To me, it's those 4. As much as I think Mooney's had a great season this year as the number 2 in Atlanta, for me, it's those top 4 guys. You got to pick 3, and it's hard to sit DeAndre Swift, but I'm going to take the top 3 in PPR scoring, assuming PPR scoring. I don't know if it's half PPR or standard, but.
How about Tony's question here? Need flex, PPR, Dobbins, Kareem Hunt, or DJ Moore?
I don't love the matchup for J.K. Dobbins. Has not played well recently, especially in terms of yards per carry. He's become more touchdown dependent. Kareem Hunt, volume play, not great efficiency metrics. I'll probably go DJ Moore there.
DJ Moore. Okay, I'll
PPR.
take this one. DG, we've got Kyler or Nix. It's Kyler for me, especially going against that Baltimore defense. I know they're not great against the pass, but I just trust Kyler. I know Kyler's going against Chicago today, but Kyler for me. What about you, Coach?
Yeah, it's Bo Nix for me. So unfortunately, we didn't help you there. But yeah, I just you're playing against the defense that just gives up everything in the passing game. So I think Bo Nix plays well this week.
Half PPR, Worthy, Ladd, Coleman. For me, it's Ladd. Start 2, it's Worthy, Ladd.
Man, it's tough, right? With now that we know Amari Cooper's out.
Not having Cooper, but Cooper didn't do much last week, anyways. It's still Worthy and Ladd for me.
Yeah, I can get on board with that.
Hey, let's finish up the Buffalo side of this game we were talking about. Buffalo starts sit quarterback room. Obviously, Josh Allen is a must start quarterback 2 for the week. Running back room, James Cook, another must start. Miami allows the 6th most fantasy points per game, 2nd most rushing touchdowns, but they don't allow very many catches, 2nd fewest catches running backs on the season. But Cook is definitely a start. Wide receiver in the room, I like Khalil Shakir. I think he's going to have a great game in the middle of the field, and I also like Coleman. Tight end, Dalton Kincaid, not a great start for him this week, but he does have 3 tight end finishes the last 3 weeks. Moving on, let's go to Footy University. This is ugly, but Mostert, Jake Ferguson, or Elijah Moore. Who do you like of those 3, Coach?
Mostert, Jake Ferguson, or Elijah Moore. Man, that's again, we just talked about Miami. Mostert's been a little bit more touchdown dependent, only getting about 40% of the snap share in Miami. Jake Ferguson, I like this week in the matchup. I mean, outside of CeeDee Lamb, who's Dak going to? So I do like Jake Ferguson, but we haven't seen the production so far this year. And Elijah Moore, I still think Cedric Tillman is the guy and David Njoku in that offense. So I would probably lean Jake Ferguson for upside there if I'm chasing ceiling play.
I like Mostert. I realize he's not getting the volume of A-Chain, but I like Mostert of those 3.
I think safer floor with Mostert for sure.
Tony C, is Jawan Jennings worth keeping over Leggett? I'm going no. I would probably keep Leggett over Jennings.
Yeah, I'd probably keep Leggett too. I do like Jawan Jennings, and I get Brandon Ayuk is out, but I'd still Leggett's a better option for me there too.
Okay, let's move on to our 4th game. Los Angeles Chargers 4-3 at the Cleveland Browns 2-6. I like the Browns winning this one. Browns 24, Chargers 17. Who do you have in this one?
Yeah, it's like you want to get on the hype train with Jameis Winston and see if he's going to eat a W this week. But I think the Chargers, I think are playing well. I got Chargers 23, Cleveland Browns 17, and I just think that it's a good matchup. I think for the Chargers. I'm not ready to buy the hype completely. I like to see Nick Chubb be a little bit more dominant. I know he's coming back from a major knee injury. Want to see him perform at a high level before I'm ready to start picking Cleveland to win football games.
Okay, let's get into the Cleveland start and sit. Los Angeles Chargers start and sit. Los Angeles Chargers offense 24th in scoring, 20th in rushing, 24th in passing. Who are we starting for the Chargers, Coach?
Yeah, so Justin Herbert, Cleveland allows the 14th most fantasy points per game. They do have the 10th most sacks against quarterbacks as well. So it's not a great matchup. He's QB 25 in fantasy points per game, which is 13.6. Weeks 1 through 4, they had very low passing volume. He's only averaging 10.6 fantasy points per game, was QB 32. No more than 17 completions or 27 attempts in any of those games. But over the last 3, they've increased the passing volume. It's 17.5 fantasy points per game, finishes at QB 11. I think he's in QB1 territory this week, so I like Justin Herbert. I'm sorry, he's QB2 territory, but I think he's got high-end QB2 outcomes and maybe even a low-end QB1. I feel like Justin Herbert plays well this week. Running back room, J.K. Dobbins, RB17 in fantasy points per game. Over the last 4 games, he's getting 73% of the snap share, 66% of the rush share, and 12% of the target share, while getting 76% of the short down and distance carries. So the efficiency has dipped at just 3.1 yards per carry over the last 5 games. And Cleveland has only allowed 1 top 18 running back this season and 1 running back to run more than 70 yards, which was Derrick Henry, who does it against everybody. So for me, J.K. Dobbins is a low-end RB2 this week. So obviously in 2 running back formats, you're still probably playing J.K. Dobbins. Kamani Vidal, RB44, not enough volume there, so I'm out on him. Wide receiver room, we've talked about Ladd McConkey. I don't need to get into stats. We've loved him. We've talked about him since we got on the show. He's been involved in a lot of start and sit questions already. I do like Ladd McConkey, and Cleveland does give up the 5th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. So we like him. Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnston, not ready to start either one of those guys or anybody else in that pass-catching wide receiver room. Will Disley has played well recently. He's battled a shoulder injury this week. Cleveland allows 8th fewest fantasy points per game to tight ends, 7th fewest receptions, and I've only given up 1 tight end to the position. Hayden Hurst is also back, so I don't trust Will Disley this week and anybody in that tight end room.
Okay, let's move on to the Cleveland start and sit. The Cleveland offense 27th in scoring, 27th in rushing, 29th in passing. Jameis Winston, let's talk about the quarterback. Jameis Winston last week scored 29 points with 80 yards rushing, 320 yards passing, and helped beat the Browns 29-24. Quarterback room, LA Chargers have allowed the 7th fewest points to fantasy or points to quarterbacks, 4th fewest passing yards, 2nd fewest passing TDs. So definitely a tough matchup for Winston. He's quarterback 19 on the week. So he's a super flex start only. Finishes a quarterback 10 in his first start. Running back room, LA Chargers allows 2nd fewest fantasy points per game to running backs, 5th fewest rushing yards, and have only given up 1 rushing touchdown on the season. Nick Chubb, he's a sit in a tough matchup. Running back 30 on the week, played 59% of the snaps last week with 16 carries for 52 yards. Wide receiver room, Cedric Tillman, wide receiver 33 on the week. I like him as a flex start. He finished as a wide receiver 10 and a wide receiver 3 the last 2 weeks. Every other pass catcher other than David Njoku.
Njoku. I love it every time you say that name, bro.
Yep. Anyway, so we're starting Tillman and we're starting Njoku. We're not starting any other pass catcher. Game 5, New England Patriots 2-6 at the Tennessee Titans 1-6. I like Tennessee winning 19, Patriots 14. Who do you like in this one, Coach?
Yeah, I got Tennessee Titans 23, New England Patriots 20. Hey, do we get to Ryan Gamlin's question? Jalen Tolbert?
No, let's go up there real quick. We've got Tolbert or Sutton. It's Sutton for me. What about you, Coach?
Yeah, it's Sutton for me. He's the wide receiver 1 in that offense, in my opinion. It's a good matchup for Denver this week, so I like Cortland Sutton over Jalen Tolbert for sure.
All right, thank you for spotting that. Apologize, Ryan. Let's get into your start and sit for the New England Patriots, Coach.
Yeah, so it looks like Drake May is going to play this week. We're talking about the New England Patriots, but Tennessee is first in passing yards allowed. They're only giving up 167 yards a game. and 15th in fantasy points per game allowed. And you ask, well, how is the fantasy points per game so high if they're giving up so few in the passing yards? It's because they've given up 10 touchdown passes to quarterback. So they're not matriculating the ball down the field, but if they can get good field position, they're converting touchdowns. But Drake May, for me, he's cleared concussion protocol, so he's playing in his 2 starts. He's QB 10 and QB 7. But it's not a good matchup against the Tennessee Titans, even without L'Jarius Sneed. They give up the 2nd lowest yards per attempt, 3rd lowest completion percentage over expected to opposing quarterbacks. May is 17th in passer rating, 32nd in completion rate over expected, and 34th in highly accurate throw rate. So he's a mid QB3 for me. Maybe in a super flex in a pinch, you start him. But other than that, I'm out on Drake May, especially in 1 quarterback leagues. Running back room, Tennessee allows the 12th most fantasy points per game and 6th fewest rushing yards with 2nd fewest receptions. But like the passing game, they do give up 10 total touchdowns, 6 rushing and 4 receiving to running backs. So you can score from the running back position. Ramondre Stevenson finished last week with 81% of snap share. And for me, that's what I was looking at, is he's going to get back into RB1 volume and get the rushing share and the volume he needed. So he's averaging 17.5 touches and 69 total yards with 5 total touchdowns. I like him as an RB2 play this week with Ramondre Stevenson. I'm out in Antonio Gibson. Only 2 games this season with more than 9 touches, so he's not a play for me. Wide receiver room, Tennessee allows the 6th fewest fantasy points per game, 5th fewest receptions, and 2nd fewest receiving yards to wide receivers. Demario Douglas, Tennessee holds slot receivers to 9th fewest receiving yards per game this season. I still like Demario Douglas this week with Drake May in play. I'm okay starting him as a flex play with Demario Douglas. He's the only pass catcher in that wide receiver room that I trust. It's nice to see Kayshon Boutte getting some play. I think every podcast that talks football should be able to drop Boutte into their script at some point. So we're going to throw him in there. Tight end room, Hunter Henry. Look, he's been a good play this week. He's had 3 tight end 1 or this season, 3 tight end 1 finishes on the season. But Tennessee allows the 4th fewest receptions and 3rd fewest receiving yards to tight end. So Hunter Henry, to me, is not a must play. But there are teams out there, I'm sure, that do not have a better option than Hunter Henry. So I get it if you're playing him.
I like
what do you
it.
got?
Let's get to a couple questions before we get to the Tennessee side.
Yep.
Hunter wants to know JSN or Puka. There are a lot of questions whether or not Puka is going to play. Would that be in an afternoon game? To finally find out, it's probably going to happen about an hour before the game. But if he's playing, it's Puka for me, and it's not really close.
Yeah, so I've got JSN on several teams, and with DK Metcalf out, I do like JSN, but you're not starting it. There's very few players I've started over Puka if I know he's healthy and he's playing.
Okay, Hunter also wants to know which 4 players are a lock for anytime TD this week. I love Bijan Robinson this week, so I would have him as a touchdown. I love CD Lamb, so there's 2 touchdowns there. Can you give us 2 more guaranteed touchdowns, Coach?
Well, I'll tell you, Derrick Henry would be another one for me. I think that's a no-brainer. The betting odds are not going to be fantastic there. I know you mentioned Raheem Mostert earlier. He's a guy that can get you touchdowns, but if I'm going to go with a lock, another lock there. I was just looking at this morning too, and now I can't remember what the name of the guy was that I put in. Oh, Kate Otten, I think is a lock for a touchdown in Tampa Bay.
Wow, that's a good one right there. That's going deep. Blake just wants to say, what's up, Coach? We love when Blake comes in. And then Ryan, he likes Alvin Kamara as an anytime touchdown today. So
that's a better one. That's a much better one than Kate Otten. There you go, Ryan. Attaboy.
All right, let's look at this one. We've got Hunter Hot wants to know Mostert or Dowdle. No Ezekiel Elliott. Apparently practice and meetings aren't that important. Of those 2, who's going to get in the touchdown more? Who would you rather play, Mostert or Dowdle?
I'll get to the Dallas Cowboys breakdown, man. I don't trust anything that Dallas is doing in that run game. It makes 0 sense from week to week what they're trying to do. Yes, Dowdle should get 15 to 20 touches this week, but he probably will not based on the way that run game has been managed. So I would trust Mostert long before I would trust Rico Dowdle right now.
Okay, let's quickly get to the Tennessee start and sit, which for me, there's only one guy I'm playing. That's Tony Pollard. If Tony Pollard, he didn't practice all week with a foot injury. However, he's expected to play. He's averaging 19 touches a game with 82 yards per game. So Tony Pollard, if he's playing, he's the only buddy on that Tennessee offense that I'm playing this week.
Let me ask you this real quick. before you
Yeah.
get going to get to the questions, do you not like Calvin Ridley this week?
I don't like. Do I like him? I like him if I have to play him in a flex spot.
Yeah.
But I don't like that Tennessee offense. I just we got Mason Rudolph in there, and yeah, you play
Big
him if
pop
you have
last
to.
week, but yeah, I expect
Yeah.
Christian Gonzalez to shadow him this week. So I don't love Calvin Ridley either. I was just curious on your take on that.
Let's go to Jace Johnson here. Andrew, he picks Gibbs as an anytime touchdown. I love that.
Another good one.
I don't love it as a Green Bay Packer fan, but I love it as a fantasy manager who has Gibbs in his home league. Jace wants to know Kittle on a bye, Hunter Henry, Smith, or Gesicki. I like Juno Smith this week of those three.
Yeah, we talked about Hunter Henry not loving him. Man, I'll be honest with you, I don't love any of these guys this week. You know, we're both big on Eric All in Cincinnati. It was Gesicki last week that got the opportunities there. If T. Higgins is out, God, man.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah.
John Smith, that's a tough one. I'd
It
probably
is
leave Hunter Henry only because Drake May doesn't have a whole lot to throw to, and Hunter Henry has played well this week recently.
Okay, Blake wants to put $1,000 on David Montgomery, Kyron Williams, Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, anytime touchdown. There you go. So there's Blake's call of the week. And
You're pretty much going with guys who score every single week, so that's not a bad bet at all.
And Jake Ridley will go off, especially since I didn't bring him up and didn't talk about him. You're probably right. Let's move on. Yeah. Game 6, Dallas Cowboys 3-4 at the Atlanta Falcons 5-3. I like the Falcons winning 28, Cowboys 27. Who do you like in this one, Coach?
Yeah, Dallas Cowboys have no identity right now. Defense has given up 77 points over the last 2 games and have allowed 599 yards rushing over the last 3 games. So they can't run the football. They can't defend the run. Atlanta Falcons 34, Dallas Cowboys 27. I do think you'll get a high-scoring game. Dallas will get a touchdown late to make that game look closer than it's probably going to be, but I take Atlanta to win this game.
Okay, Dallas starting sit. Dallas's offense 22nd in scoring, 32nd in rushing, 3rd in passing. Who are we starting for Dallas, Coach?
So Dak Prescott. Atlanta allows 8th most fantasy points per game, the 7th most touchdown passes to quarterbacks. He's QB 17 in fantasy points per game on the season. He's QB 10 through the first 5 games. But over the last 2 games, he's finished as the QB 28 and QB 18. Look, we've talked about all the metrics. They talk about every show has got to do a 10-minute segment on the Cowboys to get the ratings, right? And talk about how receivers just struggle to separate. He's got the most tight window throws in the NFL. This is a game where I think they're going to have to go with the passing game. They're going to have to throw the football around. Him and CeeDee Lamb figured it out last week. I think Dak Prescott is a high-end QB2 with low QB1 upside. So he's a play for me this week. In the running back room, Brock Purdy has as many rushing yards as Dallas Cowboys did last week in their entire running back room. So I'm not playing anybody. And the crazy part is Zach out this week. Rico Dowdle against Atlanta, had where's he at right now? What did I have it at? Rico Dowdle. He had that game where he had 20 carries for 87 yards and also had 2 grabs for 27 yards. And then all of a sudden the very next week he gets 5 carries for 25 yards. Right? And it's like, I don't understand what they're trying to do. You bring Dalvin Cook up. Anyway, it's a train wreck out there. Rico Dowdle should be a guy to get 15-plus touches, which could make him fantasy relevant, but I don't see how you trust anybody in that backfield. Dalvin Cook, 6 carries for 12 yards, 2 yards a carry last week. I'm not playing him. CeeDee Lamb popped. It was game 7 last week when he went on that big run with 3 straight games of 10-plus grabs, 150-plus yards. He went off last week with I think it was I can't remember what his stats were last week. 13 grabs, 146 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 17 targets. They need to pepper him again this week. CeeDee Lamb should be potentially wide receiver 1 overall this week. Jalen Tolbert, I do like him as a wide receiver 2 in this offense this week. And again, I think it's going to be pass-heavy script for Dallas. So I don't mind him if you need to play him in a pinch. Then Jake Ferguson, he's tight end 12 in fantasy points per game on the season, but he's tight end 8 this week. So he's got tight end 1 upside. So I like Jake Ferguson this week.
Okay, let's quickly get through the Atlanta start and sit so then we can focus on some questions here. But the Atlanta offense, 12th in scoring, 15th in rushing, 6th in passing. Quarterback room, Dallas allows the 6th most fantasy points per game to quarterback, 12th fewest passing yards to quarterbacks, and also has the 23rd highest sacks with only 16. I love Kirk Cousins this week. He's a must start. He finished quarterback 3 last week, 8th in yards per attempt, 5th in both passing yards and touchdown passes. Running back room. Dallas allows the second most fantasy points per game, fourth most rushing touchdowns, seventh fewest receptions to running backs. I think it's a smash week for Bijan Robinson. I'm also comfortable playing Tyler Algier in a deep flex spot. Wide receiver room, the only guy that I'm really looking at. Not only guy. Excuse me, but I love Drake London this week. He's a must start. Darnell Mooney, wide receiver 21, so he's a flex start, wide receiver 2 type play. And then Kyle Pitts, man, we're finally getting to see what we hope to see out of him, so he's a must start as well, Coach. Let's get to a couple questions. Isaiah Rodriguez, Downs, Chase Brown, or Leggett. To me, it comes down to Downs or Brown. Yep. And for me, I love Chase Brown this week. You're not going to get Zach Moss. You're playing Las Vegas. So I love Downs, but I just want Chase Brown more this week.
I was hoping we're going to be on the same page there. I got Chase Brown as well. And as much as we like Josh Downs or Flacco, man, I love Chase Brown's matchup this week too.
All right. Ryan's got a little gift for you. He's got a couple extra Eagle jerseys for you, Coach. So, hey, Ryan, you can come in anytime if you're just going to give Coach grief.
I think Bendo must remember I'm going to the Cowboys game against the Eagles next weekend. So he probably wants me to wear an Eagles jersey that game. And honestly, it's probably safer to wear an Eagles jersey of that game because I don't know if I like the way that game's going to go.
All right, pick 2 here, Coach. We got Marvin Harrison, Flowers, DJ Moore, Hopkins, or Pittman. Who are your favorites?
You want me to call it?
One, but yeah, go ahead. What do you got?
Look, Deontay Johnson's coming back this week. I get it, but I still think Zay Flowers, he's been in the offense for a long time. I think it's going to take Deontay Johnson a little bit of time. So I like Zay Flowers, and I like DJ Moore to pop this week. I know the volume has not been what DJ Moore wanted, but I do think the Bears against Arizona get a good matchup. So for me, the safest plays are Zay Flowers and DJ Moore. What say you?
I know the Chicago defense is real good. However, they do give up a lot. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but they do give up a lot of the big plays to the wide receivers. So I think I'd play Marvin Harrison for upside and Flowers.
There you go.
Okay, like Joe, he wants to know Bigsby or Etienne. Straight up of those two, I'm going Bigsby. And then we got Lockett, Tillman, or Taysom Hill.
Oh, I love this one.
For me, it's Tillman. What about you, Coach?
Yeah, it's Cedric Tillman for me too. Last week with DK Metcalf out, it was JSN that really reaped the benefits of that. I think that continues this week. So I like Tillman there too.
How about let's go Shakir or McConkey, Coach, in PPR?
Shakir for me, man. Last week, so there's a lot of single. So we talked about this last week on Twitter. The Bills, when they played last week, they played against a team that played a lot of single high, and I felt like that was a good Keon Coleman week. And of course, he had the touchdown and another one that got called back. But Shakir went off, and I still think Shakir to me gives you not only the more consistent volume, but he gives you a little bit more after the catch. What we've seen from McConkey. So it's hard for me to not play Shakir over McConkey.
Game 7, yeah, I like that. That was a tough one for me. Let's move on. Game 7, McConkey. Game 7, Las Vegas Raiders 2-6 at the Cincinnati Bengals 3-5. I like the Bengals 31, Raiders 24. Who do you have in this one, Coach?
I got Cincinnati Bengals 31, Las Vegas Raiders 13. I think the Raiders are going to struggle to move the football in this game.
Okay, let's talk about that Las Vegas offense that you think is going to struggle. They're 26th in scoring, 31st in rushing, 18th in passing. Are we starting anybody for the Vegas Raiders?
The only person that I would consider playing, well, there's two. Obviously, Brock Bowers to me is a must start. He's always got tight end one upside, so you're starting Brock Bowers. He's on pace to break Puka Nakua's rookie reception record, and if he can get 65 yards or more receiving, he also will join Mike Ditka and Kyle Pitts as only rookie tight ends to have 600 yards receiving in the first 9 games of their career. So Brock Bowers to me is a start. And then I like Jacoby Myers. Over the last 4 games, he's averaging 9 targets, 8 grabs, and 58.8 receiving yards per game with 2 touchdowns on PPR formats. I think he's a very safe wide receiver 2 play this week, probably a low-end wide receiver 2, but I do like his opportunity. Other than that, there's not anybody that I'm starting. You can make a case for Alexander Madison, who's clearly taken over that backfield, but Cincinnati allows the 11th fewest receptions, 6th fewest receiving yards to running backs, and yeah, they give up 11th most rushing yards, but I'm not excited about those guys. I hope you got better options in your running back room than Alexander Madison.
I'm playing him in a league at a flex spot, but I hear you. Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
only out of necessity. Let's go to Cam before we get to the Cincinnati side. Cam, he wants to know Brian Robinson is out. Worthy or Hopkins? I'm going with the guy who's been on the team all year. I'm going with Worthy in that one.
Yeah, we've talked about this in a couple start and sit questions early in the show, and we both like Xavier Worthy over Hopkins this week.
Okay, Cincinnati's offense, they're 11th in scoring, 28th in rushing, 7th in passing, quarterback room. Las Vegas allows the 12th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks, while also giving up the 13th fewest passing yards. Quarterback Joe Burrow, 5 on the week. He's a must start. Running back room, running back 19, Chase Brown. He's handled 74% of the rushing snaps since week 6. No Moss this week means big day for Brown, so he's a start for me.
Yep.
Wide receiver room, Jamar Chase must start. T. Higgins is out. Tight end room, I'm not starting Gesicki or Alt. Let's move on. Game 8, Denver Broncos 5-3 at the Baltimore Ravens 5-3. I like the Ravens 24, Broncos 14. How about you, Coach?
Yeah, I got Ravens 30, Broncos 20. I think that Bo Nix, we talked about this earlier, I think Bo Nix has a good week this week against a bad Ravens pass defense. So I do think Denver scores some points this week.
All right, before we talk about that Denver offense, real quick, Tyler, thank you so much for tuning in. He's got Jaden Reed or Coleman. It's Reed for me.
Yeah, it's Reed for me. With Jordan Love in the lineup and Jaden Reed in the matchup, I like Jaden Reed a lot. We talked about Coleman with Amari Cooper out with the touchdown opportunities there, but I would say Jaden Reed over Keon Coleman. Great question. Thank you, Tyler. Appreciate it.
Let's get into the Denver offense now. Denver's offense 20th in scoring, 14th in rushing, 27th in passing. Tell us who we're starting for Denver, Coach.
Yeah, we talked about Bo Nix. I like him this week. He's QB 13 in fantasy points per game with 3 top 10 performances in the last 4 games. He's been a QB 8, a QB 9, and a QB 2 in those games. He threw 7 touchdown passes, just 1 interception while completing 67% of his passes in those 4 games. He's also contributed 259 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. And he's led the Broncos to 5 wins in the last 6 games. This is not going to be a game they're going to win, I don't think, but I do think Bo Nix plays well this week. So I've got him as a high to mid QB2 this week. Javonte Williams, I'm out on. Baltimore allows the 9th fewest fantasy points per game, 2nd fewest rushing yards, and 4th most receiving yards to running back. So if you're going to beat him, it's going to be in the passing game. I just don't think that Javonte Williams gets it going this week. I don't like the matchup. So I'm out on Javonte Williams. I do get some lineups are probably playing him. Again, we don't know what everybody's lineups are, but I just don't think it's a boom play for Javonte Williams. And then Cortland Sutton's the only pass catcher that I trust. So as far as the wide receiver room goes, it's a total committee after him. So I'll take Cortland Sutton at wide receiver 28 this week. I think he finished a little bit higher than that. I think he's in the clear mid wide receiver 2 range. So I like Cortland Sutton this week.
All right, let's go back to Tyler before we get to the Baltimore start and sit. Tyler, Saints or Bears defense? Saints are facing Carolina, so they're in the number 1 defense on the week. So it's the Saints for me, Coach.
Yeah, I think it's a slam dunk. You're playing anybody against that Carolina offense, you'll take that defense.
All right, let's move on to the Baltimore side. Baltimore's offense, 2nd in scoring, 1st in rushing, 5th in passing. Quarterback room, Denver allows the 4th fewest fantasy points per game. That doesn't scare me at all. I'm playing Lamar Jackson. He's quarterback 3 on the week. Running back room, Denver allows the 11th fewest fantasy points, 13th fewest rushing yards, 5th fewest passing receptions to running backs. Again, doesn't matter. Derrick Henry must start. Wide receiver room, Zay Flowers is a flex start. Wide receiver 26 in fantasy points per game. However, he is likely to be covered by Surtain, so he could have a tough matchup. Deontay Johnson's a sit until I see him more in the offense, as is Bateman. Bateman had a big drop last week. Kind of think that might have been a reason why we saw Deontay Johnson being shipped over there. Tight end room, I do like the tight ends this week. I like Mark Andrews. He's a start. Saw his highest route share last week since week 2. However, Denver is a top 12 defense versus tight ends, but I still feel comfortable playing Mark Andrews. Anything you would change there, Coach?
No, I like it. I agree with you on all that, man. I think it's going to be interesting to see what Deontay Johnson and Zay Flowers. We talked about Surtain in that matchup. It'll be interesting to see how they use those guys.
Game 9, Chicago Bears 4-3 at the Arizona Cardinals 4-4. My pick, I got the Cardinals 24, Bears 17. Who do you like in this one, Coach?
Yeah, I went back and forth on this one, man. It's at home for Arizona, but I like Chicago Bears 23, Cardinals 21. I think the Bears come in pissed off after letting one slip last week against Commanders on the Hail Mary. So I think the Bears are primed to get a win this week.
Okay, let's talk about the Chicago start and sit. The Chicago's offense, 16th in scoring, 19th in rushing, 28th in passing. Who we starting for Chicago, Coach?
Yeah, if you look at the Bears' offense on those numbers too, they're up to 117.9 rushing yards a game, but over the last three, it's 158. And then passing, there it went from 184 on the season, but over 209 over the last three games. So we've seen that Bears offense improve. Caleb Williams is QB 19 in fantasy points per game. I've got him ranked at QB 13 this week, so I think he's a high-end QB2, low-end QB1. He's thrown 9 touchdowns in the last 5 games. It gets a nice matchup against Arizona. When facing bottom-tier pass defenses, he's finished as the QB6 against the Panthers and the QB1 against the Jaguars. So I think he's a good play this week. As far as the running back room, Arizona allows the 4th most fantasy points per game, 3rd most rushing yards, 8th most rushing touchdowns, and 9th most receiving yards to running back. So DeAndre Swift is balling right now. I mean, he's the RB3 in fantasy points per game over the last 4 games. I think he's absolutely in your lineup this week. And then wide receiver rooms, we talked about DJ Moore a little bit, a couple of start and sit questions. Look, he's wide receiver 30 in fantasy points per game at just 12.4. He only had 2 grabs on 4 targets for 27 yards last week, but I said it earlier in the show. He gets a good matchup against Arizona, gives up the 5th highest PPR points per game and 4th highest pass rating when targeting perimeter wide receivers, which is where DJ Moore plays. I like DJ Moore this week. Keenan Allen, he wide receiver 3 flex play for me. I do like him this week. Over the last 3 games played, he's snagged 10 grabs on 19 targets for 113 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he's found the end zone twice in the last 3 games. It's a good matchup, so I like Keenan Allen. And then other than that, I mean, those are the only must starts for me. Cole Kmet, he's a mid tight end too. So yeah, if you're in a pinch or you're in a PPR or a tight end premium scoring, and you can play multiple tight ends, I could see putting Cole Kmet in your lineup. But there are some better options if it's a 1 tight end league.
Okay, before we go to the Arizona side, let's talk about Jared's question here. He's got Hubbard, Reed, or McConkey. Those are 3 pretty good choices.
Yep.
I would pick Reed with it being non-PPR. I think Reed is in line for a big touchdown type game.
Yeah, we've talked about Reed. I think with Jonathan Brooks out, so it'd be hard for me even in PPR. I'd probably go Hubbard just because I feel like the volume and the touches are going to be there. But if I had to choose between, yeah, I mean, those are 3 great flex options. Like you, Jayden Reed's had some down games, or Jalen Reed, but I do think Jalen Reed pops this week. So I'm okay with that call.
Ice cold OG Jones, Shakir or Worthy? I like Shakir in this one, Coach.
Yeah, it's Shakir for me too.
And I think this is the second time we've had this question: Bo Nix or Kyler Murray? I picked Murray, you picked Nix. I'm assuming that stays the same.
Yep, that stays the same. That's just based off matchup.
All right, let's move on to the Arizona side. Arizona's offense, 18th in scoring, 7th in rushing, 22nd in passing. Quarterback room, Chicago allows 2nd fewest fantasy points per game. So if you're talking matchup, I guess Bo Nix is the better play. But quarterback 9 on the week is Kyler Murray, so I'm still playing him. I like the play. Running back room, James Conner, he's a must start for me. Wide receiver 17, Marvin Harrison. Chicago has allowed the 11th most yards on deep routes, so I do expect a big play out of Marvin Harrison today. And then tight end, Trey McBride, he's become one of those guys you don't even think about. He's tight end 3, he's a must start. Game 10, Jacksonville Jaguars 2-6 at the Philadelphia Eagles 5-2. I like the Eagles winning big, 35-20. What do you see here, Coach?
Yeah, I got Philadelphia Eagles 29, Jacksonville Jaguars 17. I think the Philadelphia Eagles, especially on the offensive side of the ball, is starting to put it together. I love what Cooper DeJean is doing as the nickel back on that defense.
Jacksonville starting sit. Jacksonville's offense 21st in scoring, 16th in rushing, 16th in passing. Who are we starting for Jacksonville, Coach?
Yeah, so let's talk about Trevor Lawrence. He's QB 27 this week. He's QB 16 in fantasy points per game. And he's QB 11 over the last 4 games. He's starting to play really, really well. But you're out without Christian Kirk. Gabe Davis looks like he might be out. I don't know what the latest news on that is. Doesn't matter. He hasn't been reliable. Brian Thomas has been hurt. So I don't love Trevor Lawrence this week based on the matchup. The Eagles allow the 7th lowest yards per attempt and 11th lowest completion percentage over expected, while also allowing the 10th lowest success rate per drop back. So I do not like Trevor Lawrence this week. Running back room, Tank Bigsby. We talked about him. He was questionable with the ankle. Looks like he's going to play. He is the RB11 over the last 4 games. If I'm going to play a running back in this room, it would be Tank Bigsby. But Philadelphia allows the 4th fewest fantasy points per game and 8th fewest rushing yards, 2nd fewest touchdowns to running back. So I'm really not excited about playing either one of these guys this week. But again, if I got to choose one, it's going to be Tank Bigsby. Travis Etienne's only opportunity if he plays. His game time decision with the hamstring. If he does play, he's a full go. If they're behind late in the game, which I expect him to be, there's opportunities there in PPR formats to get some grabs. And then wide receiver room, Brian Thomas, love the talent. Chest injury, we don't know if he's playing or not. It's not a great matchup for perimeter wide receivers, as Philly allows the 3rd fewest fantasy points per game on the perimeter. But if there's a guy in that offense I'm going to play, it's going to be Brian Thomas. Parker Washington, Gabe Davis, if you can go further down the road and guys deeper in that bench, so there's not really anybody that I trust outside of Brian Thomas in that wide receiver room. Then Evan Ingram, he's a tight end 5 on the season. Even though Philly has given up the lowest fantasy points per game and 5th fewest receptions, 4th fewest receiving yards to tight ends, and not a single touchdown, to me, you're still playing Evan Ingram this week because that is the security blanket for Trevor Lawrence.
All right, I like it. Let's get to a couple questions before we get to the other side of the ball with the Philadelphia starting sit. We've got Love or Cousins. I like Cousins there. And we've got Dubs or McMillan. For me, it is Dubs. And the defense, Bengals or Chargers, it is the Bengals defense facing Las Vegas. Any of those 3 you would change, Coach?
No, I like the Bengals versus Las Vegas as well. And you're dead on. I got the first 2, the same ones you've got.
Okay, then Chico here says Jordan Love or Patrick Mahomes. We talk about there is rain expected in Green Bay. Mahomes is facing Tampa Bay Monday. I'd probably take Tampa. I'd probably take Mahomes, which is so weird that we even have to think about it this long.
Yeah.
But it's Mahomes for this week for me.
Yeah, I think Mahomes gets. I mean it's Patrick Mahomes, but yeah, if you took his name off and just looked at metrics, you're like, this guy's not a play this week. But it's probably Patrick Mahomes as much as Jordan Love is. What's he throwing 3 touchdowns per game? It seems like.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And then
but they play Detroit this week.
Green Bay is going to have a negative game script, I would think.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one.
I go Jordan Love there, to be honest with you. All
right, let's go Jordan Love. You can always, as a Green Bay guy, anytime you can prop up someone from them, I'm happy. All right, Philadelphia starting sit. Philadelphia's offense, 10th in scoring at 24 points a game, 2nd in rushing, 20th in passing. Quarterback room, Jacksonville allows the 2nd most fantasy points to quarterbacks, 2nd most passing yards, the most touchdowns. So it's Jalen Hurts. He's a must start. Running back, obviously, Saquon's a must start. Wide receiver, I'm starting both Smith and Brown. Tight end, we're not starting anybody. Dallas Goedert is out. Pretty easy with Philadelphia right now, right, Coach?
Yeah, you pretty much know exactly who you're playing, man, for sure. It's almost carry it over every week. Doesn't matter what the matchup is. You're almost playing the same guys every week.
Okay, here we go. We've got Dalton start 2, Pittman, Etienne, D-Hop, McMillan, or Waddle. It comes down to that's a tough one. Comes down to Waddle, Etienne, and Pittman for me. So of those 3, which 2 would you play?
Would you say Waddle, Pittman, or Etienne? Etienne is going to be game script dependent in terms of the passing games. I think Bigsby's the one there.
So we go Pittman, Waddle.
I go Pittman. Yeah, Pittman, Waddle there. Yep, I would.
And then Andrew, Mahomes or Goff?
Yeah, Detroit gets Green Bay. Jared Goff has proven like last week. He can throw for 85 yards, still give you 3 touchdown passes. So for me, it's hard to bet against Jared Goff in terms of what he's doing production-wise, but you also have, I think, a tough opponent in Green Bay, man. I'd lean Mahomes there. That's one where I would probably definitely take Mahomes there.
I like that.
Yeah.
Chico, I'm putting you back up there just because of Go Pack Go. Let's see.
Why not? I love it.
All right, Super CNB Challengers. Yo, I need a running back and a flex PPR. Who should I start? Brown, Hubbard, Jacobs, Downs. I'm going Brown and Downs.
I'm good with it. We love Chase Brown this week, and we love Josh Downs this week. So
yeah, Jacobs is facing that Detroit defense, so it's Brown or Downs for me.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Game 11. We've got Los Angeles Rams 3-4 at Seattle Seahawks 4-4. I like the Rams winning 32-30. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, I got Rams 27, Seattle Seahawks 23.
Okay, LA start and sit. The Los Angeles offense 23rd in scoring, 26th in rushing, 14th in passing. Who we starting for the Los Angeles Rams?
Yeah, so Matthew Stafford with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua probably back. He was QB5 last week. He went 25 of 34, 279 yards and 4 touchdowns. And now he gets a bottom 5 pass defense in Seattle. So Matthew Stafford's a start for me. Running back Kyron Williams. I mean, look, if you look at the volume he's getting, over 80% rush share, 90% snap share. He's never not in your lineups. He's averaging 19.9 fantasy points per game. He's the RB6 overall this season. He's never scored less than 14.4 fantasy points in any game this season. So he's a must start. Puka Nacua, he's a start as of last night. It's looking like he's going to play. I don't think that's changed at all this morning, what I've seen. So it looks like Puka Nacua is a go. So he's a start. Cooper Kupp is a start. They both have wide receiver 1 upside. And then the funny thing is with Demarcus Robinson, low volume. We got 2 touchdowns last week, and everybody's like, yeah, of course, Demarcus Robinson gets 2 touchdowns when I've been playing him every week when those guys were out, not getting much return for it. But and then Kobe Parkin's not enough there at the tight end position. Again, those touches are going to be dominated by those top 3 guys, Kyron Williams, Cooper Kupp, and Puka Nacua. So I'm not playing anybody outside of those top 3.
Let's move over to the other side of the ball. Seattle start sit. Seattle's offense. They're 13th in scoring, 29th in rushing, 1st in passing yards. Quarterback room, Geno Smith, quarterback 14 on the year. He's all about volume, and he is the king of volume this year. He's 1st in pass attempts, 1st in passing yards, so he's a play for me. Running back room, Kenneth Walker must start. Zach Charbonnet is the sit. You love him when he's got no Walker in front of him, but he's not doing much when Walker plays. Wide receiver room, DK Metcalf is likely out. I like starting flex start for Lockett and Jackson Smith. And the tight end room, Noah Fant is out, so You're not starting any of the tight ends for Seattle. Game 12. Before we get to game 12, let's move on to Zach. Morning. Thank you so much for tuning in, Zach. PPR, Hawkinson or Pitts? It's Pitts. Brian Thomas or Pittman? I think Thomas is playing, so I'm going ahead and playing Thomas.
Yeah, I'm playing Thomas over Pittman too, especially when I think it's going to be a negative game script for Jacksonville.
All right, if somehow I disappeared for a second, luckily I'm back. Lucky for me, not necessarily lucky for you guys. But here we go. Here's the game. Detroit Lions 6-1 at the Green Bay Packers 6-2. Strictly NFL related. I wish that Green Bay wasn't as banged up, but this should still be a great game as it relates to fantasy football. I like the Lions winning 35-28. Who do you like in this one, Coach?
Yeah, I got Lions 27, Green Bay Packers 24. Give me all the fireworks. Give me all the points. Give me all the scoring. This could be a very exciting game. So let's hope it's as high scoring as we think it's going to be.
Okay, Detroit start and sit. Detroit's offense 1st in scoring, 6th in rushing, 11th in passing. It might be easier for you to tell me who you're not starting, but who are you starting for Detroit?
Yeah, this team's averaging 43.3 points a game over the last 3 games. Green Bay's been tough against quarterbacks. 9th fewest fantasy points per game, but they do give up the 9th most passing yards, but just 12 touchdown passes. And they've forced 19 turnovers on the season, which leads the NFL. 10 of those are interceptions. So it's a tough matchup for Jared Goff, but I still think he plays well. But is he going to give you enough passing yards and touchdowns to be relevant? Because it gives you nothing in the run game. He's a QB too, so 1 quarterback leagues. He's not a must start for me. Super flex, I get it. Running back room, we talked about him earlier, starts and sits. We can go through all the numbers, don't need to. Jahmyr Gibbs is an absolute start. RB6 in fantasy points per game at 19 points a game. He's the RB1 over the last 2 with 293 total yards and 3 touchdowns. David Montgomery, clear RB2 in this offense based on rushing share, but he's still finding the end zone with regularity, so he's always got touchdown upside. So he's a guy that I'm still plugging into my lineups as a mid QB2 play. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown. It has not been the volume that we saw last year so far this year. They got so many different guys that are playing. Special teams is playing well. Defense is creating turnovers. They're scoring in so many different ways. But I still trust Amon-Ra St. Brown. I trust the talent. So he's still a wide receiver 1 for me this week. And then that's it. I mean, Cleve Raymond, hey, great story last week. We're 190 punt return yards, took one to the house, scored in the receiving game as well. But Not enough there in terms of volume for Cleve Raymond to be a start for me. And then Sam Laporta, tight end 18 in fantasy points per game, just 8.5. I do have him as a tight end one play this week. I think Sam Laporta plays well this week, so I've got him on my starting lineup.
All right. While we're even, before we get to the Green Bay, let's get this next question. It's ironic that there's two players in this game, Tucker Kraft or Sam Laporta. Holy smokes! Probably would have never thought this would be a question at the beginning of the year. But for me, it actually is Tucker Kraft. I'm playing Kraft over Laporta. When you talk about the importance in one's offense, I think Kraft is being featured more, and he's more of a someone that they really want to utilize. And so it's Kraft over Laporta for me.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I love the question. And when I talk about Sam Laporta as a play, I'm banking on Sam Laporta getting a touchdown this week. His first one from Jared Goff, as the other ones were from Amon St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs. But Tucker Kraft to me is the safer play. So I would agree with you on Tucker Kraft. I think just the consistent volume week in and week out has been there for Tucker.
Okay, let's go ahead and get to the Green Bay starting sit. Green Bay's offense, 6th in scoring, 27 points a game. 5th in rushing, 159 yards, 156 yards a game, and 9th in passing. Quarterback room, Detroit allows the 14th fewest fantasy points to quarterback. 12th most passing yards, though. That's a lot to do with the fact that everyone's in a negative game script. And 3rd fewest passing TDs. Jordan Love, he's a must start for me. You're kind of worried about the rain. You're worried a little bit about the groin injury, but I think if he's in the game, you got to play him. Running back room, this is where you kind of get a little bit iffy with Josh Jacobs because Detroit allows the 3rd fewest fantasy points to running backs, 3rd fewest rushing yards, and 7th fewest receptions. So while Josh Jacobs is a great volume play typically week in and week out, I don't like him this week. So if you can get away, don't play him. Wide receiver room, Detroit allows the 4th most fantasy points per game, the most receptions, and 2nd most receiving yards to wide receivers. Jaden Reed, he's a must start for me. Detroit has allowed the most receiving yards and fantasy points to slot receivers this year. Jaden Reed has had a couple down weeks the last couple weeks, but I expect a big blowout game today. Romeo Doubs, I like him. He's a flex start. He is the most reliable, dependable guy on that offense. He's a great great floor play week in and week out. And then I'm going to say sit Dontavian Wicks and Christian Watson. But with this offense, you can see either one of those guys popping off week in and week out. And then tight end room, Tucker Kraft. He is he's set tight end 7 on the year in fantasy points per game. He is I am going to feel comfortable playing him, despite the fact that Detroit allows the 2nd fewest points to tight ends on the season. Let's get to some questions real quick. We've got BBA wants to know, half PPR starts Sutton versus Ravens, Waddle versus Bills, Worthy or Shakir. So I'm starting 2. I'm starting Sutton and I'm starting Shakir. What about you of those, Coach?
Yeah, those two pop off right out of the gate, man. Sutton Shakir for me too.
And then let's go Maximilian. And ironically, this is, you can see I'm already dressed up, ready to go play golf as soon as we get off the show.
Yeah.
This guy right here is he's won 3 of the last 5 home leagues that I'm in. So I'm actually playing him today. And every year that we play each other, we do our best to play a golf round while we're facing each other in fantasy. So I believe he's in my living room right now. I'm going to say A-Chain. I'm going to say play A-Chain since I'm playing him. But if this was anyone else, I'd say play Henry. How about you, Coach?
Yeah, I love that, man. That's when the home leagues come into play, man. Honestly, man, Derrick Henry, in the rushing, I get it. I still think A-Chan, what he does in the passing game and in the run game, I actually think A-Chan outscores Derrick Henry this week.
Okay, here we go. This isn't a start sit. No worries.
We love trade questions too, man.
Yep. He needs a running back. Do I take Puka Nacua or Terry McLaurin okay, so he wants to know, should he trade Puka for McLaurin and Tony Pollard? What do you think? I like that. I'm making that deal. I think McLaurin the rest of the year with Jaden Daniels, and then you throw in Pollard. I feel comfortable with that trade, Coach. What about you?
Well, is he trading Puka Nacua? Is he asking if should he trade Puka or Terry for Tony Pollard? Am I reading that correctly?
Oh, then that's probably what you're talking about here. So, yes, that probably makes more sense. So, of those two, who are you trading for Pollard?
I'm keeping Puka Nakua with the volume of that passing game with the Rams. So if I can get away with having to trade one of those and I'm in a pinch, I would trade Terry McLaurin for Tony Pollard if I can get away with it. I'm holding on to Puka Nakua.
I believe we were in Vegas together this summer, and we made a big wager. We won't talk about the financial ramifications of the bet on air, but I'm curious to know where we stand with Puka versus Cooper Kupp. So we got to take a look at that and see where we're at. I know both of them missed some injuries, but that bet has got my pocketbook worried a little bit. But so hopefully Puka, hopefully you're right. It's a big Puka year the rest of the way.
Yeah, it's not fair that both guys have been injured, missed significant time, man. It would have been great to have those guys playing every week.
Who do you like best? Chiefs defense, Bills defense, or Saints defense? For me, it's the Saints versus Carolina. What about you, Coach?
Yeah, it's pick any defense against Carolina. I think you're in a pretty good place with Bryce Young at quarterback and Deontay Johnson no longer there. So Saints for me as well.
All right, game 13, Indianapolis Colts 4-4 at the Minnesota Vikings 5-2. I like the Vikings 31, Colts 17. Who do you like in this one?
Vikings 27, Colts 20. I will take the Vikings to win at home.
This is the first week that they could flex a game, I believe. I think I heard that this morning, and yet they kept this game. I would much rather have seen, obviously I would say I'd much rather have seen the Packers versus Lions tonight, but that's all good. Here we go. You got the Indianapolis start, Sid, Coach. Indianapolis offense, 19th in scoring, 11th in rushing, 21st in passing. Who we starting for Indianapolis?
Yeah, so let's talk about Joe Flacco. Minnesota allows 11th most fantasy points per game, 5th most passing yards, and 6th most passing touchdowns to quarterbacks. So it's a good play for Joe Flacco. In the 3 games he's played, 2 of those are starts. In the other game, he played a significant amount of time. He was a QB4, QB18, and QB15. So he's giving him at least QB2 production. So I like Joe Flacco in Superflex leagues, 2 quarterback leagues. I'm okay there, but as a 1 quarterback, there's probably better options out there. But I do not mind him at all in Superflex formats. Jonathan Taylor, look, Minnesota allows the 7th fewest fantasy points per game, 4th fewest rushing yards. Where you get them is they've allowed the 12th most receptions to running backs. Jonathan Taylor is definitely worthy of catching the football. That's where I say throw the numbers out the window. Jonathan Taylor is a must start for me every week. He returned last week after missing 3 games, stepped right in, 20 carries, 105 yards, and a touchdown. He's a start. And then we talked about Josh Downs. A lot of start and sit questions both last week and this week regarding Josh Downs. Minnesota allows the 2nd most fantasy points per game, 2nd most receptions, 3rd most receiving yards, and have given up 10 touchdowns to wide receivers. Josh Downs is a must start for me this week. Even Michael Pittman gives you mid wide receiver 2 to low wide receiver 2 outcomes. So I like Michael Pittman in 2 receiver formats, which most leagues we are in, or at least 2 starting wide receivers. So we like him this week. The tight ends, I don't care if what they give up. I'm not playing any tight ends from the Colts this week. So
all right, let's move on to the Minnesota offense. Minnesota's 7th in scoring, 22nd in rushing, 17th in passing. Quarterback room, Sam Darnold, I'm playing him. He's a must start this week for me. He's 12th in fantasy points per game. Indianapolis allows the 10th most points to quarterbacks, 7th most passing yards, and 12th most touchdowns. Aaron Jones, another must start. Anytime you're facing Indianapolis, and if you got guys like Aaron Jones, Sam Darnold, Justin Jefferson's his play every week. So those guys are must starts. Jordan Addison, don't really like him this week, but if you got to play him in a flex spot, I get it. And TJ Hawkinson, Indianapolis allows the 7th most fantasy points per game, 3rd most receptions, and 9th most receiving yards to tight end. So I prefer to wait a week to play Hawk to see where we're at with him, but the matchup might be too good to sit him.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% there. I wouldn't change anything. I'd want to wait on Hawkinson too, although some teams I know may be forced to play him, but I like to wait and see what it looks like.
Ryan, we've got Mahomes or Flacco. It's Mahomes for me. What about you, Coach?
Yeah, it's Mahomes for me too.
Okay, Tampa Bay, Monday Night Football, last game for the week. We've got Tampa Bay 4-4 at the Kansas City Chiefs 7-0. I got the Chiefs winning 24-14. What about you?
Yeah, I got Chiefs 31, Tampa Bay 23.
Okay, here we go. Tampa Bay starting to sit. Their offense is 4th in scoring, 10th in rushing, and 2nd in passing yards. Who are we starting for Tampa Bay?
It's funny. We didn't like Baker Mayfield last week in some cases because he didn't have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. All he did was come out and put up some big numbers again. So look, he's QB2 in fantasy points per game. He scored 23 or more points in 5 straight. Baker Mayfield to me is a QB2 this week, a high QB2, low QB1 play. So I still struggle, even though KC has played well. They have given up the 16th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. I expect a negative game script, so I think Baker Mayfield's going to be forced to throw the football. He's a mid QB2 play this week. So again, one quarterback league is not a must start. So running back room, KC allows. Look, I'm going to go through it real quick because we don't have a ton of time. 14 carries for 15 yards to Madison, 14 carries, 58 yards to Jordan Mason, 11 carries, 26 yards to Kamara. You can go through every matchup. They have not given up more than 58 yards rushing to anybody. That's an RB1 in any opposing opponent. So for me, as much as I like Rashad White out of ASU and I like Bucky Irving, I am sitting Bucky Irving, actually playing Tyler Algier with Bijan Robinson and a very good script against Dallas run defense over Bucky Irving. So I just don't like the running backs. They're going to be catch dependent. I think the run game is going to be very sloppy this week. So I don't trust either one of those running backs. I don't trust any pass catchers. Jalen McMillan, Sterling Shepard, Trey Palmer, Raheem Jarrett. I don't care who it is. I'm not playing any of those guys this week with any confidence whatsoever. The only pass catcher that I trust is Cade Otton. He is the tight end 8 in fantasy points per game on the season, and he's a tight end 6 this week. He's a tight end 1 over the last 2 games at 15.1 points per game. And the Chiefs do allow the most fantasy points per game to tight end. So if you're playing a tight end, Cade Otton's a great play this week.
Let's move on to the Kansas City start and sit. Kansas City's offense, 9th in scoring, 13th in rushing, 12th in passing. Quarterback room, Tampa Bay allows the most fantasy points per game, the 3rd most passing yards, and 5th most touchdowns to quarterbacks. So Patrick Mahomes must start, but he hasn't finished as a quarterback 1 since week 1. This could be a good week for him. Running back room, Tampa Bay allows 14th most fantasy points to running backs. Kareem Hunt's a start. He's top 24 back in each of his 3 games as a Kansas City Chief in his 2nd stint with the team. Wide receiver room, the only wide receiver I feel comfortable starting is Xavier Worthy. And then Tampa Bay's defense against the tight end struggled all year long. So Travis Kelce is a must start. Let's look at some more questions real quick. All right, we've got Deny the Flesh, Calisthenics. All right. We've got Mostert, Bigsby, or Lockett. I like Bigsby in that one. What about you, Coach?
Yep, I like Bigsby in that one too.
Mooney or Dobbins? I like Mooney versus the I don't know who they're playing. I know they're not very good. Who's Mooney facing?
Atlanta is playing my fantastic defense, Dallas Cowboys, who are without Deron Bland, without their top 4 DNs, and also potentially without Trayvon Diggs with a calf this week. Don't know for sure if he's playing yet. So, yes.
I just saw him on the field catching some punts, so he is playing.
Good. Thank God.
But, yes, it's Mooney for me as well. Yeah. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for all the great questions, Coach. You killed it as always, and we will see everyone next week.
Appreciate you guys. Have a great week, man. Thanks, brother.
Appreciate you, brother. All right, man.
Man.
Have a good week.
Later.
Go Packers.